perfect setting, a warm welcome, plenty of photo ops. Prime Minister Modi turned out in a traditional Tamil attire to greet Chinese President Xi Jinping as the informal summit kick-started in the seaside town of Mamallapuram. Plenty of handshakes, but no hug yet. An indication of the work needed to boost the Sino-India ties and bridge the trust deficit that has the two neighbours entangled in a number of bilateral issues. Prime Minister Modi took Xi on a temple tour in Mamallapuram hours after Xi arrived in Chennai to a grand welcome for his second informal meeting in 2 years. Prime Minister Modi seen in a crisp white traditional attire, Veshti, while the Chinese president coming in a white shirt and black pants as they walked about the rocky lawns of temples. The two leaders have a packed schedule that includes informal and delegation level talks and lunch and dinner meetings. The two leaders will have in total 6 hours of one-on-one talks over today and tomorrow, and separate statements are also expected. Among issues that may be talked about are terrorism, including training, financing and other support to terror groups. Others are likely to be trade, which is very important, defense and border issues. Reports suggest both sides are also looking at possible confidence-building measures for the India-China border. A 90-member delegation is accompanying President Xi. All right, so let's talk about, lots to be talked about as far as the India-China ties and this informal summit that comes a year after the Wuhan summit. What are the two sides likely to achieve? Will this just be about building personal ties, personal bonds, or can something tangible come out of this? Maybe not tomorrow, but in the near future. Joining me here in the studio, Dr. Ramesh Babu, security expert from the BJP. Ms. Anila Singh is joining me. Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary, political analyst. Mr. Vivekanand Nartham, also political analyst. And Mr. Suresh Kochitil, expert on strategic affairs. Thank you all very much for joining me. Ms. Anila Singh, all looks well right now. You've got some amazing pictures coming in from Mamallapuram. But let me start by saying what I mentioned in my intro. Plenty of handshakes, but no hug yet. Suggests that there is perhaps a lot that needs to be worked on when it comes to India and China.
Sana, I think we should not try to see from that point of view that if the two heads of the countries, they have not hugged each other too much, then the message is something different. We know very well, and we have read the body languages of both the leaders. I mean, just see the way Narendra Modi ji, our Prime Minister, has portrayed, like he had portrayed such a confident figure in USA, and we see the same here in our country. The body language, the agenda, the talks, the atmosphere where these two people are meeting and how the reaction is going in their respective countries, that projects the actual image, I can say. And the actual image is that China's head, like he understands very well that India is a very strong country, and if we have to be in a normal position, because right now China is in conflict with USA, then that China has to be in good terms with India as well. And China understands it, and China has been told that you do not have to interfere in our matters. If I mean, specifically if I say in the matter of the Kashmir, it is a bilateral issue and we know how to tackle it.
Right.
So we do not want your interference. If you have got friendship with Pakistan, you can handle that friendship, but we are here and we know very well that how to tackle Kashmir issue. But at the same time, we very well know that if we talk about India and China, both the countries are very strong, very powerful. India is an emerging strong economy of the world, two most populous countries of the world. Then definitely there can be so much more which can be done, and if these two countries come together solidly, I think they can reign the world. And I'm pretty sure that Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and the China's head, they both must be in talk that how the relations can be better, how the relations
Okay.
can be more strong.
Okay, so you've got a very positive outlook. Of course, you know, what we are trying to discuss is whether India can trust China at this point. That's a very crucial question that we will be delving deeper into. But Ms. Anila Singh has a very positive outlook. Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, are we at a stage yet where, as Anila Singh mentioned, India has told, you know, the Chinese, are we there yet? Can we tell the Chinese what to do? We've sure communicated our stance on Jammu and Kashmir. And when we talk about India-China ties, we still talk about the term managing the ties, not furthering the ties, even though they're almost 7 decades old now.
What comes out of this meeting with the Chinese president, we will know in time. But we are great in optics. And we have seen the optics in
absolutely.
Modi also. In Howdy Modi also, we saw the great optics, but there was no deal. And Howdy Modi was a political campaign, election campaign of Trump. And an elected Prime Minister of India actually batted for a candidate Trump with Abki Baat Trump Sarkar, which has never been done. And of course, after impeachment and all those things, if Trump does not manage to win, we will cut a sorry figure. Now, with respect to China, there are certain questions that I have to raise. One, in Doklam, permanent structure still continues. In Arunachal, temporary roads and intrusion by China has been there several times. Huawei 5G trial permission, though India did not like it, but
Right.
it is already given. Why 5G trial? Trade deficit is extremely biased or skewed against India. The Belt and Road Initiative that China has taken up in South Asia and Southeast Asia, in which India has not joined, is ongoing irritant between India and China.
Not to mention the latest stance on Kashmir. So as far as Kashmir is concerned, you know, China has been blowing hot and cold. It's very, you know,
Just one of the issues.
right.
But not the priority for China. It's a priority for India, no doubt.
It's very
a
clear
big
that
priority
China
for
continues to
Pakistan.
back Pakistan. We'll get into these specific issues, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, but as you pointed out, great optics, there's no denying that. And when you have Prime Minister Modi surprising once again everybody in coming out in that traditional attire, Dr. Ramesh Babu, also important to talk about, you know, are we overestimating our leverage when it comes to Beijing vis-a-vis Trump's America? I'm not just saying America, but Trump's America.
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, I think we need to do a lot of homework before we get the final concrete points on table. You know, the optics are okay, and you know, the handshakes, the hugs, these all
Let's
nice.
be generous. The optics are
Yeah.
quite great, actually.
Great, yeah. So they're all good, but how much can we, to what extent will be able to, you know,
Get the
push,
tangibles.
get the tangibles and get the concretes on table is very, very important. You know, that's one thing. I mean, a lot of homework and a lot of, I believe, to fill that trust deficit, I sincerely feel people to people contacts and industry opening ups,
Very good, yeah.
and all this is very important.
Right,
You know,
right.
this is what
when it comes to investing,
Yeah,
China investing in India, we haven't seen too much of that. Of course, there's the widening trade deficit. Mr. Kochatil insists that trade deficit is something we're constantly trying to bridge, and it's also come down. Why don't you share some figures, Mr. Kochatil? You have a very positive outlook when it comes to India and China and the future of the bilateral ties. But why are we still managing the ties? We saw the Wuhan summit, and now we're seeing a second informal summit.
Okay, I'm stuck badly in a traffic jam in Hyderabad due to the heavy rains here. So I don't know how much clarity I will have in my voice. But what I want to tell very clearly is that over the last few years, our trade performance has actually improved a lot compared to what it was earlier. In terms of the figures, if you ask me, well, the figures which I quoted in the morning, in terms of the imports from
Well,
China,
the trade
yes, we are
deficit
back.
is still close to $60 billion.
Right. $54 billion to be perfect. $54 billion. Okay, so that's what it has come down to. But more importantly, what we got to know is that the Chinese imports that are coming into India is still at a very high 20%. That means out of the total imports that India does, 20% comes from China, and that is a big worry for us because we need to reduce that figure a lot
if you want to kind of achieve the trade deficit which you're speaking about. So in fact, the entire thing, if you look at it, where China's market is going to be impacted after the US sanction of the US trade war that is happening right now, we're going to see a different kind of China in about a couple of years from now. For example, India's share of Chinese imports is about 0.9%, whereas, as I said, China's share of India's imports is 20%. So who needs more? I mean, China needs us more. And definitely we need to leverage that fact that China needs us, let us kind of bargain with them. And for the first time in the decade, actually, our exports have actually to China have risen, while the imports from China have.
Right. You know, Mr. Kochatil, we're losing your connection over there.
By 10%, 53 billion.
But you know, let me take this very quickly to Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary before I go to Vivekanand Nartam. Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, do you agree with this? Because all in all, when the US-China trade war started, you know, one would believe that the current tensions are going to continue to encourage Beijing to make nice with New Delhi, but that hasn't happened. So are we to believe that the trade tensions with the US even that's not affected how Beijing and New Delhi are, their bilateral ties? So the question remains, can India trust China?
The US-China trade war, or whatever the situation is not still completely broken. The deal is not completely broken. But this problem, there is a possibility of India and China coming together on trade and business. No doubt about that. But that hasn't happened yet. More than 217 companies have moved out of China, American origin. None of them have come to India at this point. Widening gap in the positions of China and India is a reality. China is a $14 trillion industry, 5 times more or almost 6 times more than India at $2.8 trillion. China's army, modernization and defense organization far superior to that of India. China can afford to displease India. India cannot afford. This is a situation. If it makes me unpatriotic, I can't help it. I'm talking of as an analyst. This is the situation. We begin as an underdog.
So you're saying we have to acknowledge that there is a power imbalance,
yes,
which is far too evident.
Exactly. And I have said that in spite of India's unhappiness in Doklam, the permanent structure still continues. The border incursions in Arunachal still continue. Huawei has just been given the 5th generation trial permission. Trade deficit has already been noted in the program. Right. So in the given situation, the leverage that we have is very less. So in fact, to balance out China, sometimes we have actually underplayed our relationship with US. That needs to be noted as well. So that you cannot, for example, the Kurdish have just now understood, the Kurds rebels, that US is an undependable ally. For India, China, ally is a different thing, but undependable even as a friend. However, having said that, we need to discuss, we need to debate. I must also note that we have moved a bit in some sense. Foreign Secretary dialogue started in 1988. Empowered Special Representatives dialogue between India and China started in 2003. At least we have come to informal summits between the two heads of the state. That's a good thing. It's a progress forward. I would suggest it's a progress forward from the Manmohan Singh days for sure.
But this is definitely, adding a new dimension when you talk about the informal summits to the diplomacy, the much needed dimension between India and China ties. But Vivekanand Nartam.
I must just allow me 1 minute.
Yes.
The progress more in optics. And the proof of that, there was uncertainty about this very program which is going on, meeting that's going on. It was not formally announced by either party till Monday.
And then you had the Imran Khan and Xi Jinping meet as well just ahead of this. Vivekanand Nartam, how, often we've seen that when it comes to India's ties with the US, we are certainly pushed into a corner by the United States. Do you see that happening as well? Especially, case in point could be the Huawei deal. We're still being warned by the US. We're still not sure it's a deal worth billions of dollars.
In a multipolar world that we live in today, we cannot rely on a particular partner. We constantly have to negotiate things that exist in the international politics today. looking at this particular meet, this is not for the first time. This is the second informal summit that's taking place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping. First one being in Wuhan.
But that's the question. Even after Wuhan, you still have the boundary dispute. There's no headway. You have the widening trade deficit. You've got the, increasingly China and Pakistan, China continuing to back Pakistan vociferously at the international fora as well. So what are the real tangibles that we are looking at?
No, see, what happens is we just can skeptical and cannot stop negotiation. The negotiations between the different countries have to go. And for that matter, the relationship with Pakistan, the Chinese relationship with Pakistan and China's relationship with India are different. We will have to look at these two different relationships with two different dimensions. The relationship of China with Pakistan is purely strategic relationship, and their economic interests are also involved. For example, there are huge in CPEC, and then the Gwadar port and other infrastructural projects that they have taken up. And in India's case, India is important, necessary partner for China, because India is the 7th largest country, the trading country with China, and China and huge surplus when it comes to trade with India. So that is why China will never sacrifice its relationship with India for the sake of Pakistan. So it is trying to play the balancing act between China and Pakistan, between India and Pakistan. For example, when Xi Jinping is visiting India before his visit,
but that's the question, Mr. Nartham. Do you expect China to even try and play the balancing act when its priorities are just too clear? That it's going to back Pakistan, be it the United Nations Security Council. Masood Azhar could be an exception, but that's not going to happen every time. Ms. Anila Singh, coming back to you. Of course, this informal summit is great, coming at a time that it does, but the sticky issues remain. Of course, we are ready to roll out the red carpet, but what is China giving in return? That's going to be the key question. Is China willing to invest in the country? Is China willing to pump in money in the country, show some commitment? Are we going to sit down and try and work towards resolving the boundary issues which come up more often than not? We still haven't been able to do all those things. Expecting some clarity, of course, from Mr. Vijay Gokhale's press conference, but your comments on how must India deal with a belligerent China?
All right. Sana, unfortunately, I was not able to listen very clearly what Suresh ji or Vivekanand ji or Ujjwal ji were saying, but I'm going to answer what you have asked me right now. See, when we talk about China, in India is the necessity of China. We must understand that, and China will never ever try to destroy its relationship with our country, and we have seen this not in the present day time, but if we pick up the ancient history, from that time onwards, China knows very well that where India stands and how important strategically and from the business point of view India is. So the India, which has very strategic position, and right now because of the foreign policy of Narendra Modi ji, China again knows that it cannot annoy India. We very well know that like one of the panelists was talking about the Huawei deal, that Huawei deal is so important to China. Huawei wants to invest for 5G in our country, and finally, like India has agreed, okay, we are going to listen to you. Otherwise, India was saying you might be having the best technology in the world, but it is for us to decide that whether we accept it or not. So India has come to that stand that we can tell you whether we are going to take this thing from your country or not. And at the same time, as I told you that, I mean, yes, this is the fact that India has got huge, almost $63.4 billion trade deficit with China, and it is because of the wrong financial business trading policies of the earlier times, I can say. It is not because of the 4, 5, 6, 7 years of mistaken policies, but of the years together. our country got weakened in every sectors, and on the other side China became stronger and stronger. India is working on it, and definitely one day we are going to compete China in the manufacturing sector as well. Now we come on the border side. We very well know that if we talk about Skychin, we have got huge differences, and we say that we believe in Johnson line, they believe in McDonnell line. We say Skychin is it should be with us. China claims no, it is ours, and we have got full claim in it. That battle is on. And again, if we talk about the LAC, yes, almost things are normalized there. Since 1967, we very well know, Sana, that no gunfire has been exchanged in between the two countries. Yes, small tiffs are on. If Doklam thing also was very well handled. I mean, sometimes our soldiers move that side, sometimes their soldiers move towards our sides, and they go back to their respective, back to their boundaries. So, I mean, if you talk about the border thing, it is almost, I mean, it's okay. But yes, if China, says that I'm going to advocate on the behalf of the Pakistan, and India has to listen to China, that has been made very clearly, and that has been made very clearly by the whole world.
Right. Okay.
That no one is with Pakistan, and everybody has said it is bilateral issue, and you two countries.
I know, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, want to come in. So a lot of things that Ms. Anila Singh has said, you would like to respond on that. As far as the boundary issue is concerned, it's obviously very complicated. If you talk just about the Arunachal side or the protests that we saw as far as Tibet is concerned, even in Himachal, Uttarakhand, the Siachen issue, 21 rounds of talks have taken place, but there hasn't been any real movement. And when it comes to the economy, we're far behind China. Ms. Anila Singh says this is not the result of the Modi government. This is a pattern that has now sort of accumulated in terms of, the losses or the trade deficit under the previous regime.
I would like to point out the basic thesis that has been placed here, that China needs India. India is the necessity of China. Now I'm questioning this basic premise. The positives between India and China are four. Negotiations are going on, which is good sign. Lot of good optics, which you have already told, though this program was not even announced till Monday fully. Informal meets are happening great. Lot of imports from China to India, and therefore an unfavorable trade deficit is also there. So these four are ongoing things. What are not going? What is the tangible outcome of the last two informal meets? In one single sentence, what is the tangible outcome? None. Worsening situation on border. Aksai Chin is not even being mentioned by India now.
Right.
Indian government is mentioning POK every time, now and then. But Aksai Chin is not even mentioned. Doklam permanent structures have come to stay. Nepal the current government of Nepal is far closer to China, getting closer to China. Arunachal intrusions are happening. Belt and Road project, which has covered the entire South Asia and Southeast Asia mostly.
That's right. That's a major point of contention.
And Huawei just now has been mentioned as a success story. No, it's a failure story. Huawei 5G deal, everyone knows that Huawei has been involved in espionage for the Chinese government as well.
Right.
Informally.
So certainly there are these new issues piling up, and I think we all agree that the informal summit is perhaps one of the best ways to go about trying to work out those issues. We're stopping for a quick commercial break, coming right back. Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast on the Modi-Xi summit that kick-started in Mamallapuram in Tamil Nadu. And the key question is, while the optics may be great, but looking at the ties, taking away from what happened in the Wuhan informal summit, can India trust China, especially with the latest statement on Kashmir and the support, the consistent support to Pakistan and the rock-solid friendship that the two nations share right now? Dr. Ramesh Babu, we are talking about from Wuhan to Chennai. What do you think has changed in that time? What were the takeaways? Are we going back in ways to still trying to get things done which were pending or perhaps outstanding during Wuhan?
See, post Doklam, we had Wuhan, right, in 2018. Now, post 370 abrogation, we are having now the current summit, right? Informal summit at Chennai,
Correct.
Mallappuram. So this actually says the significance that the Chinese president and his entourage has given to India. Even in the post 370 abrogation, still he wants to meet the Prime Minister. And I mean, it says without shouting.
Right.
It says that still is in India. We wanted to be with India, and we want to work with India. We want to iron out the issues with India. That shows the positivity in this meeting. Simply they could have said abstain, not to meet.
Yes.
And all that. Within 2 days, let's say 50 hours
Yes.
notice, you had the president coming down. It's something historic. Okay, and I am very positive about one thing, that Modi, I mean, not saying he belongs to a BJP party and all that, as a strategic affairs analyst, been observing the politics and geopolitical, geoeconomic issues. I simply believe and trust this man has the ability to get out what India needs at this moment. So I think we need to give him that kind of space,
Right.
and wait and watch. And also we need to build so many, I mean, some time back also, Sana, I told you in the same program, we need to have, let's introspect, how many Chinese language centers are there in India? How many universities out of 300 universities in India under UGC,
Right.
how many public and private universities are concentrating on Chinese language, literature, or Chinese culture? If you want to really win over on somebody, first you have to also win over on yourself.
Right.
We need to actually put the house in order, which we haven't been able to do in the last 70 years. I think you sometime back made a point. We should have a written national security strategy. Till today, Sana, we don't have a written national security strategy. We need to commit in writing, where does India want to go? Foreign policies and defense policies are always dynamic.
Yes,
there is
that's
nothing
true.
called static. So let them go to bed with Pakistan. We don't have any problem. We don't have any problem on that. Let's not worry about what Pakistan does to China or what China does to Pakistan.
Right.
That is on the peripheral thing. The core is what you do to China, what China does to you.
Right.
You keep that on mind and build from there, and then iron out issues. There are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. Our interests
Right.
are permanent, right? So
Well,
given this, we need to go.
That really makes me remember that term frenemies that has been used more often than not to describe India-China relationship. Mr. Vivekanand Nartam, Dr. Ramesh Babu says that give the Prime Minister some space, let the relationship develop, no matter how many sticking points there are. But the fact remains that China is known to be quite belligerent. It's expansionist in nature. That's been the policy. It's got stakes in all of India's neighbors as well, in terms of billions of dollars as investment. How should India be approaching issues, these sticking points, in a situation like this?
Sana, I wanted to come to this point, the historical aspect of the relationship between China and India. Why this city, Mahabalipuram, has been chosen to be the place for this.
So let's
informal
also,
summit that
since
is
you've
taking
decided to speak on this, let me also just tell our viewers that this was a request apparently that came in from the Chinese diplomats, that this is going to be the location where the informal summit will be held, precisely because of the 7th century, the history that goes back to centuries ago between the two countries. Yes, please go on.
Yes, Sana. So I was saying that the trade relationship between India and China dates back to some 1600 centuries back, when the Pallava kings had the established trade relationship with Chinese, the various other traders in China. And, in China also, there is a huge number of people who follow Buddhism. So when we were talking about China being belligerent, China being expansionist, China being aggressive in very many issues, there is no denial to the fact, the kind of policies that China has initiated, the string of pearls policy in which China has tried to encircle India by getting Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, and now the Pakistan, the biggest, the ally to China. So in such a situation, we will have to go, try to re-invoke the historical relationship that China and India had.
Right.
So I think in this particular summit, what Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his entire team is trying to ensure is, to re-establish the trade relation, re-establish the relationship that was there between the two countries, so that the situation doesn't escalate. On the sidelines of UNSC meetings and the UNGA meetings, China has very categorically supported the Pakistan's position. But now when he is coming, Xi Jinping is coming to India, the Chinese diplomats have quite categorically stated that this is a relationship between Kashmir is a issue between India and Pakistan, and China will not intervene into this. So I think there are achievements, and we will have to go piecemeal, and we cannot expect the changes to take place, or we cannot expect the absolute benefit over over a certain period of time. We will have to wait, we will have to be patient, and we will have to get as much of things as we can to our side.
Right. Well, China has also said, that we are working for Kashmiris to help them get their fundamental rights and justice. There should be a justified solution to the issue of Kashmir, and China will stand by Pakistan for regional peace and stability.
Sana, I wanted to make one point.
Yes.
Sana, there is no denial, and we all know that China is the second biggest economic power and the strategic power also. And as the saying goes, we can choose our friends, but we cannot choose our neighbors. China is a neighboring country to us, and China is one of the belligerent powers in the immediate vicinity. So we cannot isolate ourselves, or we cannot neglect the relationship between India and China.
Absolutely.
We will have to go ahead, we will have to get as much things that can be done to us.
So which brings me to my next question to Ms. Anila Singh. Ms. Anila Singh, given the number of outstanding issues and the fact that how big these issues are, at least some of them, the boundary issue that it's been going on for decades now, do you think, despite these grand settings, this big, meeting, informal meeting that's happening, the buzz, the media coverage, India and China should really sit down and start with, coming up with small solutions to many of these bigger issues and then take it from there? Do you think that's going to work more, and that informal summit gives the two leaders a chance to do just that?
Both the countries are doing that. Recently, our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, even he had visited China. He had talks with the authorities there. And now we are having this informal summit. I mean, see the difference. I mean, on one hand, we see this grand celebration, and both the national heads, they are together and they are talking informally in a relaxed manner. And on the other side, we see that Pakistan's national head and the army chief, they run to China and they want to talk on different issues. So this is the difference in between Pakistan and India when we stand in front of China. Pakistan is a lapdog of China, and India is a very strong country from every point of view. As I mentioned earlier, Sana, that even we could have been better than China economically if our policies were at the right place. But unfortunately,
Ms. Anila Singh, many would really come out and attack the BJP government, considering the state of the economy today, ever since Mr. Modi has taken over.
You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct, Sana, and people are doing that. And people who have got good knowledge of economics, they know it very well that India is not standing isolation of this economic slowdown. Whole of the world is going through, whether we talk about US, Germany, UK, Australia, all big economies, they are going through this slowdown. So India is not in isolation, but India is tackling, and we know very well that government has taken several major bold steps to come forward and give
and let's see what those steps really translate into. Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, your comments at this point, in terms of the two countries trying to come up with solutions. All right, we'll try and get Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary back with us. But Vivekanand Natham, I want to listen to you on this. Do you think working, taking baby steps is going to be really fruitful in a situation where India and China are right now?
When it comes to diplomatic relations between different countries in the international politics, we cannot have absolute control on the other partner. And in today's time, and even for that matter previously also, when it comes to diplomatic negotiations or any sort of negotiations in international arena, there is no zero-sum game. There is a positive sum game. You win something, I win something. Even for that matter, in terms of talking in terms of the trade deficit, this has gone down. Initially, it was somewhere around $63 to $64 billion. It has come down to $60 billion now. And though it's a piecemeal change, the piecemeal achievement, but the achievements are there. Another thing, while I talk about the interdependence between the two countries, is for two reasons. From the side of India and as well as from the side of China as well. China needs India for the trade purposes. But India is the 7th largest trading partner, as I mentioned earlier also. And when this trade war is going on between China and United States, in such a situation, China thinks India can be a partner. And it's not in terms of only economic negotiations. There have been times when it, for that matter, when it came to negotiating on climate change, China and India, and there are various other groupings like BRICS and IPSA and such groupings, China and India have come together and stood in solidarity with each other, right? And for India in particular,
okay. So when you talk about climate change, that's a whole separate issue, because India, China and the US are one of the world's 3 biggest emitters of greenhouse gases. So the developed world thinks that it's India and China that should do more, which they are, in fact, fortunately. Dr. Ramesh Babu, you want to come in, because apart from adding to what's being discussed, I know you want to comment. Global Times pointed out that the second meeting is the most important bilateral event of the year, but Global Times also says since Modi was re-elected Prime Minister, India's diplomacy with China has become more aggressive. This is the Global Times view, and it's very important as well what Chinese think of Mr. Modi.
So I wanted to make one point here. India's foreign policy, when you introspect, we should find out with clarity of thought who are important in our immediate neighborhood and our extended neighborhood. When you do that mathematics correct, when you do that, to what does China want from India vis-a-vis Pakistan, vis-a-vis Nepal, vis-a-vis Bangladesh, or you do that kind of calculation. We got to be smart, and if it doesn't pinch us really bad, then we have to do that a trade-off with China. On be it Tibetan issue, be it the proximity between Nepal and China growing up, the proximity between China and Sri Lanka, the proximity between China and Pakistan, all that you need to take it in a very strategic view and operational view. Two kinds of views. One is immediate, tactical and operational. One is, the second one is at a strategic level. When you do that mathematics correct, and how much you wanted to give in to get whatever you want from China, you need to have that kind of thinking in the foreign policy circle. As you mentioned some time back, Global Times said now Modi 2.0 is a now a much empowered guy, empowered the Prime Minister now. He can definitely take some bold, aggressive decisions when it comes to China also, because already we have taken in the recent past abrogation of 370 vis-a-vis Pakistan. I think we can expect some kind of surgical movement type, not exactly in the military front, but in the foreign policy front.
Okay,
let's
expect that, because China obviously would be looking at its own interests. Yes, Professor Chaudhary, we lost you there for a bit. Ms. Anila Singh, coming to you next, ma'am.
Can I speak?
Yes, Professor Chaudhary.
Yeah, I got disconnected in the meantime and I haven't heard all our co-panelists clearly. But nevertheless, I do feel, and I would like to put it in record, that it is good that our informal meet is going on. This is the third time informal meeting is going on. Once also happened in India, as you know, in Sabarmati, and then Yuan, and now here in South India. It's good. Having said that, the illusion of strategic parity with China that India has to be forgotten. Indian strategists have to understand that we are in the realm of small games, small, little, but continuous games with China. So whether the game is with respect to development of regional infrastructure, whether the game is trying to reduce the trade gap, whether the game is to keep China sort of neutral between Pakistan and India on Kashmir, whether the game is with respect to prohibiting Chinese intrusions in Arunachal Pradesh, whether the game is with respect to investment of China increasing in India, whether the game is with respect to countervailing Chinese influence in Nepal and Sri Lanka, in whatever forms, but India has to look for small gains and not live in the realm of an illusion of strategic parity, because Chinese economy is 6 times larger, and the military, we do not know what is the time, but military is far more organized than India. The other point we have to understand, a powerful military country, a military power has to also learn to produce its defense equipment and ammunition domestically. China produces a large part of its arms and ammunition itself, and we are the largest importer of
which
arms
is
and ammunition
certainly
in
the
world.
direction in which India is also moving through its Make in India program, the next
Defense,
batch of Rafales, the Tejas. So we're getting there. But Ms. Anila Singh, and we have to give this to the Prime Minister, you've got a Prime Minister in Houston hand in hand with the President of the United States. Just days later, you've got the Indian Prime Minister taking a stroll at the UN World Heritage Sites in a port town in Chennai, while today Donald Trump is meeting the Vice Premier of China, trying to talk out the trade differences. So clearly that gives us an idea of how, under this present government, diplomacy has sort of entered into this new uncharted realm. It's sort of a new paradigm, Ms. Anila Singh.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, like any national head should understand the position of his or her country. See, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has done it very well, and he understands that how India is strategically so important for other countries as well. See, if we talk about China, as you had mentioned earlier, Sana, that China is expansionist. And we know it very well, even in today's date, where if China finds somewhere the shallow sea, it dumps soil there and other things, and it makes an island, and it tries to control that even the sea area of that island which China creates. So that type of expansionist China is. So whether it is Australia or Singapore, I mean, these all countries are very much worried about the way China behaves, I can say. I mean, India is centrally positioned, and left side countries and the right side countries, I mean, everybody is worried the way China is behaving. So India is in a position to command, and India is doing it in very well way, and India has shown the world when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji went to USA, that how we are tackling the USA, and now how we are tackling the China, and we have told it in very clear words without mincing that we are there to know how we have to behave with the citizens of our country. We know how to handle them. We know we are working for their good. So no other countries, they can come and dictate their terms on us. But I mean, if the opposition or some countries like Pakistan, they keep on commenting on us, that is not going to reduce the aspirations of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to make India one of the strongest economies of the world. But definitely we have to work together for that. unfortunately, many a times, people in our country, they start behaving as the adversaries. I mean, they go to some different country, especially if I talk about UK. I mean, the delegation meet there,
Right.
and they start discussing about the politics of our country. I mean, that gives a very bad image of our country, which shouldn't be done by the opposition. Let us
Right.
stand strongly when it comes the matter of the country. Nothing is about the nation.
Okay. Mr.
Yes, one
Vivekanand
more thing I
Nartam.
wanted to add here. Sana.
Yes, Ms. Anila Singh, please complete.
Just one more thing. I mean, yes, like China is one country who has always opposed India's entry in United Nations Security Council and
NSG.
becoming India the member of NSG. And on the other, yes, and on the other side, like India is playing its card very, very strongly and well when CPAC comes.
Right.
So, OBO are the
point taken,
favorite
Mr. Vivekanand Nartam, from what Ms. Anila Singh is saying, you know, the nationalistic approach that both the leaders have, do you think that's going to be a bonding factor, a cementing factor when they'll be meeting in tomorrow now and even today during the course of the day?
Sana, when it comes to this nationalistic factors, I think the factors, I don't think that can be a bonding factor between two leaders. For if some leader is absolutely nationalistic, then that person will try to protect its own interests at the cost of anything, for that matter. But I think, as we know, that both the leaders are strong leaders and the strong men in the international politics, and the way Prime Minister Narendra Modi has come to power with the biggest mandate, bigger mandate than the previous government.
So strong
this time,
personalities indeed.
I think, you know, and you know, the strong, a person who enjoys so much of support domestically will be respected internationally also. That's what we have seen when Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Mr. Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, President Xi Jinping, President Putin, and Netanyahu, and many other leaders in the world. So I think he goes.
Well, I'm completely running out of time. But 30 seconds from you, Dr. Ramesh Babu. Are you hoping to see the two leaders hug by the time Mr. Xi Jinping leaves tomorrow in the afternoon?
Yeah, I think, you know, whether they hug or not, but I'm very positive about this trip of President Xi Jinping to Chennai, because definitely it shows that they are also serious and sincere about it, not only from Indian point of view, but also from the Chinese point of view.
Right.
This particular meeting is definitely...
And that's most important, I think, the positive outlook to begin with, before you even start talking about specific issues.
Between individuals, between countries, between states. Trust is very important.
Absolutely.
Right? So
and to bridge that trust deficit.
This is definitely
instead of the
welcome
including the trade deficit. I think those are the two important goals. Sorry, completely running out of time. That's it. Then thank you so much, all of you, for joining me on this very fruitful discussion. Taking a short break. Foreign Secretary's briefing is coming up at 9 p.m. We'll be cutting live. Stay with us.